This clip is going to study the anatomy of the kidney. So the kidney belongs to the urinary system. So let's quickly go over the structures that make up that system before we dive into the specifics of the kidney. So you have two kidneys, left and right kidney, and the kidney basically is responsible for filtering blood and then producing urine. There are a few more functions of the kidney, such as the regulation of acid-base balance of the blood. It's also involved in releasing a hormone that produces red blood cells. So there are several more functions to the kidney, and we're going to be exploring those in a later clip. But for today, let's just focus on the anatomy. So then let's move on to trace the path of the urine that the kidneys had just produced. And so this urine is then going to make its way down two sets of tubes, one tube coming out of each kidney, and these tubes are called the ureters. So the ureter is going to bring down the urine from the kidney and then deposit it and store it in the bladder. And so the urinary bladder is responsible for the storage of urine, followed by excretion of the urine to the outside environment through the urethra. Right? And so these are the different regions of the urinary system. So let's go back to the kidney itself and look at a cross-sectional view of what it would look like on the inside. The first thing that you'll notice is that the kidney is made up of two compartments. The first compartment is going to be the outer shell that I'm highlighting in blue. And so this is typically around 1 centimeter in width, and we call this area the renal cortex. So the renal cortex is the outside or outer compartment of the kidney. And then we have the inner compartment, and that's going to be known as the renal medulla. What you'll also notice in this medulla is that we have these triangular structures. And so these triangular structures, we refer to them as the renal pyramids. And a kidney typically has around 6 to 10 renal pyramids. All right, so I'm going to label P for each of those pyramids so that you can see it more clearly in this cross-sectional view. Now, in between each of those pyramids, we have what we call the renal columns. And so the renal columns just kind of are extensions of the cortex that go in between each of those pyramids. So I'm going to write renal columns in between pyramids. Okay. Now the next thing that you'll notice is that I have those green funnel-like structures drawn at the base of every renal pyramid. And so each renal pyramid is actually nestled in a cup-like or a funnel-like structure, labeled in green here. And so these here are what we call the minor calyces, or minor calyx for singular. So I'm going to circle one calyx, and I'm going to label that as the minor calyx. And what that does is that it's actually going to pool the urine from each pyramid, and then it joins to become a larger structure that we call the major calyx. So let me highlight that for you. I'm going to circle that, and that is going to be the major calyx. Okay, so you have a minor calyx at the end of each renal pyramid, and then they're going to pool together to form what we call the major calyx. So around 2 to 3 minor calyces are going to pool to give you a major calyx. So 2 to 3. Okay. Next up, if we're trying to trace the pathway of urine, because now we've established that urine is going to get pooled into these minor calyces, which will then pool into the major calyx, and then the major calyx is actually going to converge onto this region here that we then call the renal pelvis. Okay, so 2 to 3 major calyces. So calyces is the plural for calyx, and they're going to converge to form the renal pelvis, so right around this region here. What you'll also notice is that the kidney is kind of curved. It's curved in nature and it's convex on the lateral surface, and on the medial surface here, okay, it is concave. So concave medially. So what you'll also notice is that there is a slit right here in the concave medial side of this kidney, and this slit is what we call the hilum. Okay? So the renal hilum is a slit, and this is going to allow the entry of all of these structures and components that you're going to see. So we're going to have the entry of blood vessels, entry and exit, of course. You'll have the renal artery coming in, renal vein exiting. What you'll also notice is that we have some nerves and lymphatics. Entering and exiting through the renal hilum. And then you'll also notice the ureter. And so the function of the ureter here is to bring in all of the urine that has been produced by the kidney after it's pooled through the minor calyx, major calyx, renal pelvis. This urine is then going to make its way down the ureter all the way to the bladder. And so, in summary, these are the major components of kidney anatomy.